Welcome to the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges vet med leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the vet med profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it. All right, everybody. Crystal Stokes here, and joining me today is Dr. Mansum Yau, who is not your ordinary veterinarian. With a passion for feline health and a knack for making people laugh, Dr. Mansum has carved a unique niche in the literary world with The Ins and Outs of Cat Carriers, a veterinarian's guide to cat carriers. When not treating whiskered patients, Dr. Mansum can be found doing clean stand-up comedy or writing and creating captivating illustrations for the next bestseller. So today, we're going to dive into thought leadership in veterinary medicine. But before we do, let's learn a little bit more about Dr. Mansum's background. So Dr. Mansum, first of all, thanks for being on with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So could we just start off with what made you want to be a veterinarian? How did this even come on your radar?
It wasn't on my radar until I was in high school, until my uncle rescued 2 dogs and I fell in love with dogs. I grew up with canaries and tortoises, not with cats and dogs. So it wasn't until my uncle rescued these 2 dogs that I realized how much fun dogs can be and how much I love being around animals and how I wanted to be around them every day.
You're winning points with all the dog lovers right now. They're like, yes, dogs are your entry point.
Yeah, and a lot of people think of me as a crazy cat lady, and they don't realize that I didn't start off with cats. I still love dogs. I actually have a dog myself. So it's interesting because people always think you're either a cat person or a dog person. And I want to tell people I have enough love in my heart for both species.
Me too. I love both. That's really sweet. And so that was what kind of sparked your interest. Was it a straight line for you? You went high school, I'm going to get into veterinary medicine, I'm going to go for it? Or did you kind of, have some ambivalence when you were in undergrad?
It was a straight line for me, surprisingly. I studied really hard. I basically didn't know how to not study. That's all I did when I was young. I just studied. I studied while people were partying. I had a goal in mind, which was to get into vet school, and I was able to accomplish a goal, thankfully. And I was able to accomplish my goals. I'm really grateful for that. I know some people try really, really hard to get into vet school. And I also knew that I had to be a well-rounded person. It wasn't just about grades. So I did other extracurricular things. I worked for the school newspaper. I volunteered a lot. I started this ink cartridge recycling program to raise money for a local humane society.
Yes, that's really cool. So you knew where you wanted to go. You did all the legwork to make sure you were a competitive applicant, diversification of your application, and you got in. And then I'm assuming you went into clinical medicine once you were out?
Yes, I'm still in clinical medicine. I still work as a locum. I still work full-time as a locum because thankfully I'm good at it. And it also thankfully pays the bills. Some of the other things I do for fun aren't paying the bills yet.
Yeah. Well, I think that was part of what attracted me to having you on as a guest today, because I do hear from clinicians regularly that sometimes they feel a little bit stuck, in the narrow lane of practicing as a clinician, but sometimes wishing for more and wondering what else is there out there that I could be doing. And I thought that your story of how you essentially dove deep into a certain subject to become essentially an expert on it, which is kind of the definition of a thought leader, someone who knows way more than the average bear and can then help teach people about it, led you to writing this book. So I'd love to kind of go down that path of even the genesis of the idea before it was just percolating. Maybe you wanted a little more than clinical medicine. How did this happen?
I've always loved writing, and I I'm a quiet person in general. Like, when I'm visiting a clinic, or when I'm in a clinic for the first time, I'm observant. Like, people think, oh, she's so quiet, but they don't realize just because someone's quiet, they're not talking, it doesn't mean there's nothing happening. They're watching, they're observing, and they're thinking. And I notice at many clinics that I locum at that people struggle with cat carriers. So whether it's getting the cat out, or getting them in, usually it's getting them into the carrier at home that's a problem, but then at the clinic it's getting them out, because once they're at the clinic, they're terrified, they don't want to come out. So I wanted to do something about these poor cats that are just terrified of their carriers. In some cases, you're pooping and peeing in them, or they're just so stressed and like so fractious that they end up injuring humans, right? Like the people come in scratched up, bit, they're late, or in some cases they don't show up at all. Like they're no shows because they can't even get their cat into the carrier, and those cats needed to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people. I have 3 cats currently, and when I, was reading what you had sent over, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so obvious in some ways as a person who works with cats, or also being a former veterinary technician. Like, we all knew that getting a cat bite was the worst. You much rather get bit by a dog any day, but cat bites are more likely just because of the nature of the things like you're describing. And it seems like such an obvious thing where we could use better information and innovation, yet I was definitely guilty as a pet owner and as a technician of never really researching it. I just sort of, the status quo, like we have a carrier, we just smush them in there as best we can and hope for the best, and put gloves on to get that cat out. And I guess that's all, we kind of just made do. So I thought it was really cool that you actually took the time. So tell us more about what you did for the research on this book and what you were uncovering.
I read a lot of research articles. There probably aren't as many research articles as there should be on cat carriers, but there are studies about, for example, Bayer did a study, and they found that one of the barriers to getting timely veterinary care is actually the cat carrier.
Yeah.
Royal Canin did a study in the UK as well. And I also did a lot of research online looking at articles about cat carriers, and I found a lot of them, to be honest, not as engaging or as fun as they could be. And I wanted the information to be fun. I wanted learning about cat carriers to be fun. So I decided to make my book fun. Like in the beginning, it was kind of like a manual, like a how-to guide. And even though it was helpful, it was not fun. It was not different from what you could get online. And someone pointed out to me, like, oh, nowadays it's really hard to sell nonfiction books because you can just get the information online for free. So, I mean, from a monetary standpoint, that's true, but it's also not conducive for learning because, if it's boring, it's dry, there's so many other things you could be watching or reading, right? You just go on TikTok instead, YouTube, Instagram. So I wanted to make my book fun, and I even created a crossword puzzle. I drew lots of cartoons. There's fun quizzes, funny poems, even animal jokes, cat carrier jokes specifically, and a couple of comics in my book as well.
I love that. So when you were doing that, can you speak at all? This might be a little bit of a vulnerable question. So if you don't feel comfortable answering it, I totally understand. But I'm wondering what it brought out in you. Like, if you're mostly practicing clinical medicine, you're in the hospital day in, day out, and then you get to step away from that and kind of dive into these things like drawing and being creative and thinking of fun games. Like, was this sort of like a reconnection with like a child, a young part of yourself, or, what did it bring out for you in those moments when you're actually getting to be creative?
Oh, definitely. It definitely helped my inner child. I made myself laugh multiple times writing my own jokes and funny poems and drawing my own cartoons and comics. My pets are looking at me like I was crazy, like, oh, why are you laughing, to yourself? But I definitely had a lot of fun writing the book, and it was a break from my regular life, my, work life, I should say. And it gave me a purpose too, because sometimes people feel stuck at work, and it's just like, it can get really stressful and depressing at work. And I knew that when I got home, that I had something lighter to do, something funner, something more artistic. And it was if anything, a healthy coping mechanism.
Absolutely. I can totally imagine if I put myself in your shoes and I think about the kind of stress of the day and wanting to just kind of let it go and shift into a whole nother mindset, and creativity is like very different than dealing with patients or trying to organize the day and the flow of medicine. And it sounds very rewarding.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very grateful that I found creative outlets and that I had time for these creative outlets, because I know some people are, they have so much on their plate that it's hard to find time.
Mm-hmm. This is true. I'm wondering too, have you felt, I guess another pain point that I often hear from people in the veterinary field is sometimes like a sense of they want to have more of an impact. Like sometimes they hustle, you sit back and wonder like, how much of an impact am I having? Like sometimes it just feels exhausting. And with creating this book and imagining it getting into the hands of people where pet parents are now able to get their pet into the hospital on time, they're not missing appointments, so their pet's getting adequate care. Team members that are actually going to handle the pets, the cats are able to, or you're able to get a hold of them more easily. There's less stress, there's less injuries. Are you feeling any of that yet? Like the impact that you're having, the ripple effect that your book has had is something that fills your cup?
Not yet, but you just vocalized everything that I was hoping that this book would accomplish. The book has only been out for just over a month, and not a lot of people have read it yet or heard of it even. Yeah, so speaking of thought leadership, for me, it's about thinking about something in a fresh way, like a fresh perspective about something that most people don't think about, and guiding them to understand why it's important, like why it makes a difference. Because they might be thinking like, well, it's just a cat carrier. I'm a veterinarian. Why does this have anything to do with me? And the answer is, if you'd like to be able to better handle your patients, so they're not panicking and, already riled up by the time they arrive to the vet clinic, then the cat care training makes a difference. Hopefully the patient arrives calmer, then you can do a better physical exam. You can do more tests on the patient when the patient isn't all riled up from being in the cat carrier. And also, if people can get their cat into the carrier, they can bring their cat into the vet on a more timely, in a more timely manner, hopefully. And there are less staff members getting injured. Like, I've actually been bit by a cat before. Like, I remember opening a cat carrier and putting my hand in. I didn't even scrub the cat. Like, all I did was put my hand in, literally. I just reached in, and next thing I knew, there were canine teeth in my hand. So I'm guessing the cat had been scruffed before. Like, the cat was just waiting for my hand to go in. And and it hurt. Like, I had to go and get antibiotics. It was just, if we train cats to not be scared of the carrier, then hopefully we can train them to not be so scared of us too, right? Us as like veterinary professionals.
Yeah. I love that. It's funny, right when you were talking about it, my cat jumped on my lap. I'm like, this is perfect timing. This is Shadow.
Hi, Shadow.
She likes this conversation and says, I would like to have one of those pet carrier experiences. This sounds really good. It's the picture that you paint. I can really see it and feel it. And I appreciate how this version of thought leadership for you was driven by a personal experience, like over and over being in the clinic and seeing something that could be better. Are there other areas right now that you are considering diving into in terms of thought leadership? Other areas that really interest you?
Definitely. My next book is about litter boxes, litter, and house soiling.
I would read that book too. I think I'm going to be one of your early adopters.
That would be great. As a clinician, I see cats with urinary issues every week, sometimes even every day. And a lot of them have no idea what cystitis is. Like, they always think, oh, it must be urinary tract infection. Like, that's, always what they think it is. And I'm like, no, we need, there could be crystals, there could be stones, there could be, stress in your household. And almost every time I ask them, has something stressful happened recently, like right before this episode of bleeding from the, blood in the urine? And I would say 9 out of 10 times the owner could tell me right away what stressed the cat out.
Yes. I remember that very well. I have one male cat, and same thing happened where he had blood in the urine, brought him in. And the thing that just stressed him out was we had dog stats. We had a dog in the house, and he was like, oh, look, we have another cat joining us.
Say hi, boo boo.
Oh, cutie. I like his little collar. That's super cute.
Say thank you.
This is a very cat-friendly podcast, obviously. Oh, so cute.
We're blocking the screen. All right.
I'm having a vision of these books being like coffee table books inside every veterinary hospital. When you're waiting for your fur baby, you could just pick this book up and like flip through it. Like, wouldn't it be neat to distribute that to like pet clinics or hospitals all over?
That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal. Yeah, because a lot of people are just sitting there on their phones, like getting bored or just staring at the receptions. I mean, maybe you've noticed this before, but usually there's a bit of a wait time after an appointment is over, waiting for medications or for lab results. And instead of using that time productively, some people just stand there and stare at the receptionist.
Yeah. Like that will make the appointment go faster, maybe.
Yeah.
I also really appreciate how in the work that you do, you weave in a lot of like comedy and things that lighten it up and make it fun. And I mentioned in your bio when I was introducing you that you also do some clean stand-up. So which came first, comedy and stand-up or writing and thought leadership?
Writing. I got into stand-up comedy because I wrote a full chapter of cat jokes in my book, and I wanted to get better at writing jokes. They don't teach how to tell jokes in real life, so I went to stand-up comedy school, and then I fell in love with stand-up comedy.
Oh, hey, flip through that book a little bit. Like, do you have a page you want to show us? So this is the book. For those who are watching on YouTube, we do have a video version of this, and right now she's holding up the book, The Ins and Outs of Cat Carriers. Oh, that's a gorgeous book, and it's a large book.
It's the size of a magazine, so it's thin but large, if that makes any sense. And it's fun to read like a magazine, hopefully.
Well done. And so this, I'm assuming, well, we can go and I'd love to just tell people now where they can find it because we'll link it up in the show notes. So is this something that's on Amazon currently?
Yes, it is. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on Barnes and Nobles in the States and chapters in Canada. And it's mostly nonfiction, but there's a little bit of fiction. So that I wrote one fable from a cat's perspective, and I wrote funny poems and jokes as well.
This is so fun. I love it. So I appreciate you so much just sharing some of the work that you've done in this space. I want to pivot a little bit.
Sure.
Those pictures are great.
Thank you.
I'm going to pick your brain a little bit as if I were that. I'm going to gift this to some of my veterinary hospitals that we work with. It's already on my list. Like, I'm very excited about this. Yes. For those listening today that are, in the veterinary field and they are feeling that sort of like, I know there's more. I think this thought leadership thing really interests me. But I'm not sure where to start. Like, do you have any tips for how to just get started if people think, I'd like to dive into something and help teach? I think many veterinarians are natural teachers because you're educating people all day. Give us some inspiration here. Like, how could we get started? We're feeling a little stuck.
Yeah, I would say get started in the exam room. A lot of people think that, the exam room is just for, diagnosing issues, which it is. I mean, you do diagnose medical issues, but it's also an opportunity to educate people, right? Because there's so many people who are willing to learn. I mean, unfortunately, not everyone is, but a lot of people are willing to learn. So you start in the exam room and then you can take it online, on social media. And there's so many platforms now. I've met so many vets on different platforms. Like there's the vets I've met on Threads. So the Instagram sister app, I guess you can call it. Yeah. I've met vets on LinkedIn. I've met vets on Instagram. There are vets on TikTok, of course, YouTube. So there's so many social media apps. And there's also cat cafes and cat festivals. And so they're places where you can educate people. And it's not just about advertising a vet clinic. A lot of people, like I've contacted pet festivals that thought I was just trying to advertise for a specific clinic. And I'm like, no, I work for myself. I'm just trying to educate cat parents or dog parents.
Yeah. I was even thinking shelters, like where I get all my cats or all, and having something like that as a resource that maybe is in the handout. Like, here's a book you should order. It's really helpful cat carrier book. And you can have it like listed there as something to order. I love the idea of just kind of getting started and thinking about what's happening in the exam room. Some of your pain points as a doctor that might be motivating the change that you want to see in the world. What were some of the barriers that you ran into as you were trying to get this started?
I would say energy, because, after work, I was tired. And, I had to find the energy and the motivation to keep this going, even when people didn't believe in what I was doing.
Yeah. So you would have some naysayers who are like, this is silly, don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot, thankfully. But like in anything in life, not everyone's going to understand why you do what you do. And part of being a thought leader is knowing that not everyone is going to believe in what you're trying to educate people about, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be a thought leader. It'd just be common sense, like common knowledge, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't have to do it because everybody would already be doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then, so with what you developed, like at the end of this podcast, I'm going to have you hold up the book again and open up some of the pages. I do want people to see the level of detail that went into this. Was it really challenging for you to go from, writing, I'm assuming you did a lot of academic writing in vet school, to then trying to learn how to actually create a physical book with color and graphics? Was there a long learning curve for you in trying to create the actual real physical product?
Definitely. So I illustrated and wrote the book. The illustrations had I would say, quite a sharp learning curve because I am a self-taught illustrator or artist. I didn't start drawing until I was 33. And obviously, like, I drew in, school, but it wasn't like something that I did for fun until I was 33 years old. And I discovered these erasable crayons. So believe it or not, they actually make crayons that can be erased. And that's what actually helped me get over the hurdle of drawing, because for the longest time, I was like, if I make a mistake, it's not going to look good. I won't be able to I won't be able to erase it. And then I found these crayons and I started drawing with them, knowing that I could erase anytime I wanted. And I almost never erased. Like, it was very rare that I actually used like the eraser, but that helped me get over the fear of, imperfection. Let's call it that. And from there, I graduated to using an iPad to draw. So I used the app called Procreate to draw. And that app is great, but it took a lot of practice in the beginning to get used to how to use it. It's not there are apps that are less user-friendly, but, there is still like a learning curve. And I was using another program before this, since been discontinued. I was using Adobe Sketch, I think, and I don't think they have that app anymore. So I went from Adobe Sketch to Procreate. And in terms of writing, yes, I did a lot of academic writing. And then I switched to more casual writing for this book because I wanted to be more conversational. Like, I don't ever want people to think that I'm lecturing them. Like, I don't want them to think that I don't want them to feel bad for doing things wrong or for doing things differently. Like, I wanted this to feel like a safe place when they're reading the book. And so the tone, I had to work on that tone, the tone of the writing. And it was very humbling to read my earlier writing and find mistakes, because when you're writing a book and you want it to be good quality, there are many, many rounds of edits. So it took 7 or 8 edits to get to, the final publishing stage. And each round of edits, I would find really long sentences, clunky wording, lots of a lot of extra like phrases that didn't need to be there. And it was a very humbling experience, to be quite honest.
It's amazing how when you edit it, you think, I've gotten it all done, right? My editor had a very sharp eye. Then you can match it in a week and you're like, wait, I definitely missed certain things.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I hired a professional copy editor. I hired a professional proofreader. And even then, I found things that needed to be improved. Um, yeah.
It sounds like a labor of love that it took a lot of time and a lot of effort, but also was very rewarding for you.
Yes, I learned a lot. I I thought I was a good writer before until I read all my edits and I was like, oh wow.
So as you go into the next book that you're planning on about litter boxes, do you feel like you're more prepared this time around?
Yes, I do feel like I'm more prepared. Thank goodness. It's about 30% done. So I've already started it.
Oh, wow. Is it going to be in a similar style, like a magazine style?
Yes, similar style. The colors might be different, just so people are confused. This book was in the next book. But it'll be a similar style, maybe more fun things than the next book.
Yeah, I love that. And if you're going to give advice to those listening about, just when it comes to like how to get started, like, okay, I'm bought into it. I definitely want to do this. I'm keeping an eye on things going on in the clinic. So I'm getting ideas, but now I'm like, I feel crunched because I'm in the clinic this many days and then I have family time. And I often feel like I just don't even have time to take a breath, but I want to be able to express these parts of myself, right? Like, when is the time ever going to be right? So how would you advise I get started?
So have you ever heard the expression, shavings make a pile?
No.
Yeah. So even if it's just 15 minutes a day or half an hour to an hour a day, it adds up. I didn't come up with that expression, by the way. I borrowed it from a podcaster.
We'll take it. That's great. So the advice you give to people is just start somewhere, that even a little bit of time over time adds up to a product.
Yes. Yeah, it does. Have you ever like looked back after you've completed something, you look back like, oh my gosh, how did I complete this? And you can't remember every individual day that you worked on the book, but in the end, there's a finished product that you can see, which is really nice.
I totally agree. Like, I kind of think about that for myself with tennis. Like, when I started, I was so bad. I was a beginner. I sucked. And I sucked for like 2 straight years. And I think about now, I mean, I'm still not great, but I can play on a team. And this version of me, like, I didn't think this would ever exist. If you asked the beginner version, the first few lessons, being super embarrassed because of how bad I played, I would never, it's hard to even think about keeping up to get to the stage of actually being good at something. But it's also like being a veterinarian, like the work that you all put in to actually pass your boards and practice medicine. You think about that kid that just liked dogs and first started off wanting to be a veterinarian, how much work it took to get here. It's proof that you all can do it. You can do anything you put your mind to. Pretty rad.
I'm nodding my head.
Yeah. So as we're wrapping up today, then I'm going to link up a bunch of things in the show notes. There are just ways that you can get in touch. If you want to follow Dr. Mansum, I'll put all of her different social medias in there. I'll find the link to your book in Amazon. We'll post that as well. But before we leave today, do you mind just holding up the book to show everybody, and then maybe flip to a few pages that you really like so that we can, I think the seeing is believing. By the way, is that your cat on the front?
No, this is actually a cartoon cat that I created. Her name is Starry.
Oh, my beautiful black cat.
Yes. My cat's actually on the back cover. My cat's gray and white, a gray and white tuxedo cat. I have cartoons of my cat in the book too, but it's mostly cartoons of Starry, the black cat. Mm-hmm. So there are lots of them in here. So that's her. And there are lots of positive affirmations in this book. So it says, don't spend time beating on a wall, hoping to transform it into a door. Coco Chanel.
That's great.
And then on this other page, there are 2 comics / jokes that I wrote or drew.
Very good. It looks really engaging. I can see like having this out on a coffee table would be great. Oh, there's one with a crossword puzzle.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's tips in here. So there are tips for different cat personalities.
Yep. It looks like you have, which cat is there that I just saw? Is that a Sphinx?
Yeah. I think it's a Devon Rex.
Oh, yeah. Devon Rex.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. So they're different breeds, different, so many different cats in here. I even have a three-legged cat and one-eyed cat as well.
That's great. Do you have a Manx?
I don't. I have a gray and white tuxedo cat, domestic short hair.
Yeah, but we'll take that. Maybe in your next book, it'll star a Manx, a tailless cat.
Oh, actually,
Cat.
sorry, I misunderstood what you said. I think there's a Japanese bobtail in here. I'm not sure if there's a Manx. Yeah.
That's close enough. At least you represented the tailless cat. So
there's a cat with like a nub.
That's great. Well, Dr. Mansum, thanks so much for being on with us today. Is there anywhere else you want to point people if they want to find out more besides Amazon?
Yeah, you can visit my website, www.drmansum.com, so drmansum.com. I'm actually doing a fundraiser for a local Vancouver cat rescue group as well. So I designed these badges.
Oh. Yeah, it's really cute.
Or patches, like they're iron-on patches and stickers to raise money for Vancouver Orphan Rescue Kitten Association, or VOCRA.
Nice. And it's starring the cat.
Yes, starring the black cat.
Beautiful. Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
I'll link all that up in the show notes, and I hope everybody checks it out. I love seeing veterinarians kind of marching to the beat of their own drum and doing something that's so different and creative. So thank you for inspiring us today by sharing your story. It's really cool.
Yes. I think thought leadership is something that not enough people talk about. It's just in life, I feel like a lot of people just try to go with the flow. They try to fit in, they try to fit the mold. And sometimes we need people to step out of their comfort zone. And that's how we make advances in life in general.
Absolutely. Listen to Dr. Mansum. Step out of your comfort zone. If you see something that needs to be done and you know something about it, share that knowledge. It's really empowering. I think you've done a great job.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a great night. Thanks for being on. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.